So, we are going to be talking about the WannaCry software from 2017. Here's the disclaimer. Here's our sources of information. And here are the learning objectives. Feel free to go back to any of these last 3 slides and pause the video if you wanted to read them in depth. So, without further ado, what is WannaCry? Well, WannaCry is a ransomware, and it's one of the most notorious cyber attacks in recent history. It hit the world on May 12th, 2017, and caused global chaos. It infected over 200,000 computers in over 150 countries, so ransomware really did not discriminate. And the attack used 2 main exploits, Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar. These tools, actually developed by the NSA, were later on leaked by a group called Shadow Brokers, which allowed WannaCry to spread rapidly and cause significant damage. What did WannaCry do? Basically, how WannaCry worked was it encrypted all user files, adding a .wncry extension, and it changed the desktop background to a ransom note, which I have pulled up further, and it also had a pop-up window which demanded payment in Bitcoin to decrypt the files. So let's look at those two now. So this would be your background right here, and this would be the pop-up. You can see here it demands $300 worth of Bitcoin to this address, and it provided general instructions on how to pay, what's going on. Kind of crazy. So let's go back here. So, who was infected? WannaCry, as I said earlier, really did not discriminate. It hit many organizations worldwide. Some of the notable victims were Boeing, Honda, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Russian Federation, the University of Montreal, and the National Health Society. Who was infected? So, as I mentioned earlier, WannaCry really did not discriminate. It hit many organizations worldwide. Some of the notable victims were Boeing, Honda, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Russian Federation, the University of Montreal, and the National Health Service of England and Scotland. So we're going to go on to talk about those last victims. So the NHS in England and Scotland was the hardest hit victims. It's widely considered to be one of the hardest hit victims. Over 70,000 devices were infected, including computers, MRI scanners, and blood refrigeration units. Non-critical patients even had to be turned away from care, and ambulances were even rerouted. The attack severely disrupted healthcare services and patient care. So, how did the attack go on to affect the operations of the NHS? If you look back on it, this was kind of a positive outcome for a really negative situation. They went on to take significant steps to improve their cybersecurity practices. They created something called a cyber handbook and launched a cybersecurity kind of campaign program to assess and upgrade all of their infrastructure. A total of £171 million were allocated to these improvements. And the NHS also set up a data security helpline to assist with any further incidents. So, how did WannaCry get stopped? Amazingly, WannaCry was stopped by accident. A security researcher known as Malware Tech discovered a kill switch. And interestingly enough, Malware Tech actually had a pretty checkered past in the cybersecurity realm, working on a few different pieces of malware, and so he kind of knew how they operated. He had some hands-on experience with this. But more technically, he registered a specific domain name found in the WannaCry code, and this was how he stopped their malware from spreading any further, and this action potentially prevented around 100,000 additional infections. So, what happened to the ransom money? As you saw earlier in the pop-up, it was asking for about $300 from the victims to get all your files back, and the attackers were able to collect around $140,000. The funds sat in a Bitcoin wallet for about 3 months, and eventually the money was moved through 6 transactions into a Bitcoin mixer, which made it completely untraceable. And this is just kind of a great representation of the challenges of tracking and recovering ransomware payments that are made in cryptocurrency. So now let's start talking about the two exploits that WannaCry used. So Eternal Blue is an exploit in Microsoft's SMB v1 protocol, which is developed by the NSA. It was leaked by shadow brokers in April 2017. And Microsoft released a patch before the WannaCry attack, but many systems remained unpatched around the time of the attack. Eternal Blue allows remote connections and data transfer through SMB, helping WannaCry spread. This was, I like to think about it like this was the boat that it rode. Now, what was inside the boat? Double Pulsar. It's another NSA-developed exploit that was later on released by shadow brokers. It lets attackers remotely install programs on local machines. It lives inside of your RAM and disappears after the reboot. And even if the door is closed with a kill command, the malware is still able to install the software. So how they work together. Basically, Eternal Blue creates the connections from system to system, delivering Double Pulsar, and Double Pulsar installs and executes the WannaCry software on the user's machine. These exploits work together to spread WannaCry from one host to another, causing super widespread damage. So, how could they have mitigated this? To prevent ransomware attacks like WannaCry, it's crucial to, 1, patch your systems, including operating systems and anti-malware software. 2, disable the SMB v1 protocol, especially in smaller companies. This could have prevented the majority of these attacks, if not all of them. And large companies should block SMB ports at border routers to prevent, exploitation. So, further on, employee training. Teach your employees to recognize suspicious emails and only download trusted documents. Don't click on any suspicious links. Implement internet whitelist and blacklist to control website access. These kind of proactive measures can significantly reduce the risk of ransomware infections. So, some of the discussion questions here. So, how did the Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar work together to help WannaCry spread? That's a good thing to go back throughout this video, read the slides, listen to what I said. What were the main factors that led to the extensive impact of WannaCry? Considering the ransom payments, what challenges do cryptocurrencies bring to the table when it comes to tracing and recovering these payments? What lessons can we learn from the WannaCry incidents? About employee training or network security practices? Basically, how can this attack help us learn how to better defend against these in the future? I think these questions will kind of help us understand the broader implications of this WannaCry attack and just help us narrow down the lessons we've learned for improving our cybersecurity practices. Thank you.